at Michigan State, I somehow ended up in a class with Phil Fisk, who lived in the Ozarks in the 60s, and it was called Radical Thought in America. It was part of the arts and whatever, ATL electives, and out of all these things you could pick to get a core credit, I saw Radical Thought in America, and I said, I don't know, let's see what these people are saying. And I can tell you, it didn't shift my point of view at all. He was surprised to find out what I was when the class was over and we were having our meeting at the end of it about the whole semester, saying goodbye, basically. How'd you do? What I thought. And this hippie was surprised to find in my final paper that I'd mentioned having been in the military. And in that meeting, he looked at me and he said, "You were in the military?" Because you took the paper in and he read it in front of you. I said, yeah. He said, I never would have guessed. And that was the most honorable moment I ever felt for myself in my life. I had short hair then. You don't talk about the military when you look like a decent person because people think you're fucking bragging or some shit. And what you do is you let yourself get out of control, and then you start wearing your military shit because people go, fuck, show it for what it is. This is what we are now, since I've been there. During that class, Phil Fisk had assigned a book by an author named Jerry Fresia, and it was titled something like blah, 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 the framers of the Constitution. He makes it clear it's not the founding fathers, they're the framers of the Constitution. I only hear one person say it right these days, and I couldn't tell you who it is, but I'm surprised every time they get it right. I didn't read the book. Not then. It's rarely that I read a book during the time in a class I'm supposed to. I actually once, even for Camus, Albert Camus, for his book, The Plague, I had to write a story about that, and I found a guy in the dorm I knew. He had read it, and I said to him, I said, what are the main points? And he gave me a jotted, just wrote down main points, things like that. And I just made up a paper based on those fucking main points, and I got an A. So I guess I got the story. But years later, I read the book. I went so far as reading his memoirs that were on the floor of the car. He had the manuscript for his life memoirs, and he got in an accident and fucking killed. But they published them posthumously, however you want to say it. It depends on where you're from. And the thing is...
You got a letter from Congress.
Oh. Look at it. Thank you, Danny. I got a letter. It's, it's not so exciting after all. It was always fun to get letters, but now you get this stuff. Why are they contacting me? Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, Washington, D.C., 20513. Official business. I told them. Same thing I tell them in Mary's Tavern when the phone rings. If it's the FBI, I'm not here. this is what I always said, and it was a joke. But if it's the CIA, I'll think about it. That's the same thing I told these people. And now they're writing me a letter. Oh, jeez. I'm gonna have to use, yeah. What are they writing me about? Do they know I'm talking about Jerry Freshia? And I'm talking about how years later I did read his book that Phil Fisk assigned to the class. And I read it on the light rail as I would be going to class after work because I needed one last class. It happened to be a government class. I did it at Mission College because the credits passed over. And I was done with everything then. But while I was taking a government class, which I've always avoided, that's why it was the last one for me to take, because I don't want to get involved in this shit. I've avoided politics because I don't buy into it. Politics, being nice to somebody. Well, it's not politics anymore. They're all about to go tooth and nail. Geez, I should have my glasses. Hey, there's a congresswoman, my representative in D.C. She hopes I and my loved ones are doing well. I wanted to take this opportunity to update you on my recent efforts in Congress to secure your duties. The CIA is looking for work. I got it. Anyway, so I'm taking this government class, and I'll finish reading that later. Look. There it is. They want me. Uncle Sam wants me. No, he doesn't. He already had me. He's on to my other cousin now. So I read the Jerry Freshia book. At the same time, I'm taking a government class. Jerry Freshia is telling us all these terrible things, like how Abraham Lincoln, and I'm sure he fought for it, and maybe he changed his mind later in life. But as a teenager, like a 12-year-old, I believe, maybe it was 16. It's been a long time. Those little things don't matter. He took a riverboat thing down with his uncle down the Mississippi to go do some business or something, and they stopped, and there was one docks, and they had slaves chained on the docks, and they were selling them, and these guys were in chains, and they just looked just destitute. And he said, "Oh, what a terrible thing it is for those poor beasts." So he spoke things you never hear about before. It's all cited. Look it up in the back and go, and you'll get the records. And so taking this government class made me angrier and angrier with the government, while reading Jerry Freshia showing a different side of it, what appears to be much more realistic. Dragging somebody down to the place of voting and kicking and screaming, and they're dragging people in bloody with their clothes torn. These are like senators and shit, because they have to have that many people on the floor to have their way. Yeah. They don't agree. They're going anyway. Same way that poor guy's gonna end up in fucking court one day. So give me a tweet. This is part of why I am. It was because I see more of it than just that guy. That guy in that class teaching had worked for the government, and he loved the government so damn much. it was like, it was sickening sweet. And I'm reading Freshie, and I'm looking at him. One of the things I read, because Phil Fisk had read it, so we read, was that the United States, since its statehood, since it became, has been at war in foreign countries 7/8 of the time. This was in 1992, 93. I'm reading this. Well, yeah, we're supposed to. 7/8 of the time we've been a nation, we've been at war in foreign countries. So it seems like war is one of our things. And Andrew Jackson actually was the first one to take us abroad, to take war against peoples. He's on the 25, the 10, the 50. The 20. It seems like we are a warlike nation from the start. Look how easy it is to get everybody all riled up. Ugly Americans. Indentured servants to Georgia, a buffer state like Australia, to keep the Mexicans out, the Spaniards, whoever it was. We're a warlike state, warlike nation. I see what's coming in about a year and a half with this election. If he wins, if he loses, we're at war all the time in foreign nations. There's a catch-22 here, I realize. And you see, it's interesting. It's almost synchronicity. It's almost a high coincidence that Joseph Heller coined the term in this nation, basically, catch-22, because it was a story that was written about war. Either you're crazy. If you're crazy, you don't know it, so you don't say you're crazy. But if you don't say you're crazy, then you are crazy. So how do you get help? That's the catch-22. It was during World War II. A pilot trying to get out of flying. It's fictional. But this is what we're running into now. In about a year and a half, we're going to see what kind of war, I suppose. There's a possibility. If that poor guy loses, it's going to be a war against us, against each other. And if that guy wins, it's going to be a war against the world, because the world has seen enough of and had enough of Donald J. Trump. And they will not necessarily be fighting us in physical combat. This war will be dragging down us as a nation, our economy, all this stuff. We could possibly be the subjects of the next world war if that guy wins. Only we won't be taking it on them. They're going to be taking it on us together. You want to talk about a world coming together against one very vicious thing if that guy wins. So, what do? It's catch-22. Would you rather fight your neighbor or your global finances? Pretty sure I can take my neighbor.